Listen, Grizelda, it's such a huge privilege to be with you today and just to be able to share these few minutes. I've known you I tried to figure it out this morning, for probably the better part of 14 years.
Wow.
I know that we've been aware of each other from longer than that, but we've actually known each other for a period of 14 years. So it's great to be able to capture some of your story just here on video today. How long have you and Martin been married?
I paused because we've been together for a very long time, apart from being married. But this year we will be celebrating our 18th wedding anniversary.
Wow!
But we met 1996, and we've been together ever since. So yeah, we've been together more than half of our lives collectively. So
Wow.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, and that becomes a journey, hey? It's those moments of life and doing life together that shape and form in ways that we could never imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
So married for 18 years, and you guys have 3 kids?
We have 3 kids. We had them all in London. We came over in 2004, just 2 years into our marriage, and just came with 2 suitcases, a flute and a trombone, and basically started over. And yes, in 2009 we had our first son, and he's 11 now. And then we have our second, he's 8, and then we were blessed out of the blue with a little baby girl, and she is now 1 year old.
Wow. Listen, I want to take you back because as you know, we're speaking about the challenges of life. And I still remember the time when you and Martin were pregnant with your first little boy, and the excitement, the joy thereof. And a few months after his birth, you guys started noticing that, here were some challenges. Tell me about that. Just bring me into that picture.
Well, I will answer your question with a little bit of background story. In that, before we came to the UK, Martin and I were in the ocean one day, and we nearly drowned. We got caught in a kind of a riptide or a cross current kind of situation, and we were being swept out to sea. And very soon land disappeared, and we were in the open ocean, and we were just being dragged into the ocean.
Oh.
And there was no way for us to get back. And in that moment, we as a couple, we called out to God, and we had an amazing moment in the sea. And I think that moment basically set us up for the challenges that we didn't know then would come. But in that moment, God spoke to us, and he sent a wave out of nowhere. We were in open sea. It was just this weird freak wave, and just basically washed us back to shore. But that galvanized our belief that if we stick together, if we don't drift apart, but if we stick together, he will carry us through any hardship and through any crisis or catastrophe. And we didn't think much of it at the time because it was such an isolated incident. But when our first son was born, it was also under very traumatic circumstances, where he was only 28 weeks gestation. And we went through a very harrowing journey of NICU and all of that. And we kind of pulled back to that memory of being in the ocean and being stuck. And it's a kind of a life or death battle. And we pulled through that fine. And just as we kind of caught our breath, and this is where I'm answering your question, we noticed that things were not on track. I hate using the word normal because what is normal?
Yeah.
But we just saw that there were some communication issues, and there were a disconnect. I think that's a very good way to describe it, a disconnect. And so he was diagnosed with quite severe autism at the age of 2. And that set us on a path where we had to not see that moment we had in the ocean as an isolated incident, but basically use that for our everyday life, because that set us on a very difficult path, and a path that very few would know. But he's 11 now, but he's still on the low functioning spectrum of autism. He's still in nappies. And I mean, just that alone is very difficult. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we very, very, very early in our relationship, we had an encounter with a catastrophe, and that taught us a lesson to basically take a knee and hunker down and hold on to God, and basically assume the brace position, but hold on to God for dear life. And that has seen us through many challenges.
When a husband and wife start the journey off with family, and there's a sense of excitement in the journey, what are some of the questions that arise when you are suddenly faced with a challenge like a child born early and then facing severe autism? What were some of the, just to backtrack, Grizelda, obviously you guys know Jesus and you've walked a walk of faith, so faith wasn't new for you in the journey, but as a Christian, as children of God, what were some of the questions that you guys were confronted with in that initial phase, realizing this was the challenge that was now on the table?
It's hard for me to almost remember how I felt initially, because it was such a it was like a tsunami hits you, and that initial contact is very forceful. But I somehow, after you go through the shock, the questions that I had was, what about the future? And that is a very scary question to ask, because we dream dreams for our children. And our children, they are the legacy that you will leave behind. That is the prime difference, from having pets and having children, is you're actually leaving something great behind. And that was my biggest question. And even now, just talking about it, it grates me, because I don't have answers for that. I don't. But I think I coped with that question by not looking too far ahead. I know that sounds a bit counterproductive, because everybody always asks you, what is your 5-year plan? What is your 10-year plan? Where are you going to go? All those things. But in this instance, it was actually necessary to not ask that question and to only look at today and ask for grace for today. So I think how we went through that initial journey, or that initial start of that trajectory, was to actually ask and wait for manna every day and not look too far ahead, because that just completely freaks you out. And that's just me. I mean, everybody might feel differently about that, but that is how we as a family coped, was to not look over our shoulder and ask what if, could have, should have, all of those things, but also not look too far ahead and then fall into the trap of fear and anxiety, because you can only deal with this right now in front of you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does answer the question. Obviously, it does. It brings a whole new set of questions, obviously, Grizelda. where was God in all this for you? How did you, where was God?
Mm. Um, I'm very cautious to answer that question because um, I do want to give you a real picture and a real answer. I don't just want to um, rattle off, a few scriptures that would fit, into this pigeonhole. Um, I must be honest to tell you that sometimes God felt very far away. And it was a conscious decision every day to look for him and to silence all the voices that would go off in your mind and to just search for him. Um, and he would always turn up in that still small voice, not with fireworks, not with a big fanfare, but a very still small voice, and it always comforted us as a family. And I can say with so much thankfulness and gratefulness that we are one of the very, very few special needs parents who are still together, and that is only grace. And to answer your question, that is where we found God. Was He knit us together, and we were that cord of 3 strings. And the closer we drew to one another, the closer we also drew towards him. And the closer he drew towards us, the closer we drew to each other. So it was like an, a nucleus. And from that nucleus, we could draw immense comfort, because it is an incredibly raw experience, because every day just grates past all your masks, all your defense mechanisms, all your everything, right down to the bone, and it just really leaves you bare. So I think that's where we found him, was a bit like Elijah in the cave, was in the still small voice.
Grizelda, I think the beautiful thing about your story is that one realizes, one would so much like to hear the story, yay, we've gone through it and we lift up the banner, and I realize, as with you, there are many people that would probably be looking at this testimony and think to themselves, I'm still there, I've not gone through this, I'm still in the middle of this. What would you say to somebody like that? What would some of the words of wisdom be from your side that you have mustered? What would some of the things be that you feel, here's the stuff that got me through? What are those words of wisdom?
I really would want to hear those words of wisdom from myself to myself first, actually, because I am by no means through it, and I'm by no means at the finish line, and I don't view myself as somebody who can stand on the podium and get the medals. Not yet, anyway. My mom always says this is not heaven yet. So I think I don't have words of wisdom for somebody. I have words of wisdom for myself. So if that can encourage somebody, then great. But I think what I had to tell myself, and especially in this COVID-19 challenge, was a scripture that I've known all my life. I come from a Pentecostal background, and we used to sing this scripture in a little Pentecostal chorus over and over and over and over. And I can honestly say I never understood it before. But I think I'm starting to get a grip on it, or starting to grapple with it. And it is the scripture that says, "Be still and know that I am God." That is the hardest thing for us humans to do, is just to be still, just to shut it, just to be still and know that I am God, was a profound thing for me in this COVID challenge, where I had to not only silence all my fears and worry and anxiety, I had to silence those voices. I had to silence the lies that come into your heart and cripple you to the point where you cannot function anymore and you just cannot go on anymore. I had to silence those. I also had to silence my own ramblings. So I silenced social media, and you know, we are like twittering birds. We comment, and I even silenced that. And I just went into a place of stillness. And I don't say this to sound super spiritual or trite or anything like that. I'm just saying it in a sense of, I humbled myself and became still and opened my ears and listened. And even though I didn't have the answers, I just knew. I knew, and I still know, that He will come through for me, and that He will come through for my family, and that all the puzzle pieces that He holds in His hand, He will place. But when we are in a flat spin and things are incredibly difficult, the first thing that we do is we are looking for answers. We want those answers, we want those solutions, and we want them bullet pointed on a list, delivered a DHL style, and we want it now. But to actually just let it go, like we did in that ocean many, many years ago, the moment we started, when we finished flailing around and kicking and panicking, and we just let it go, silenced ourselves, and actually just acquiesced, that's when He spoke, and that's when he arrived in the situation. So that is what I tell myself daily, and especially now in this time that we've had, that He is a good Father and He is right there, but I'm just being still, and I know.
Grizelda, I know this is not the all-comprehensive interview and testimony and story. It's a photo opportunity. It's like getting in one of those photo booths, and there's five photos that pop out on the other side. It doesn't tell the whole story, but I do want to thank you so much. Thank you for sharing in a very raw, open way just some of your journey with Martin and the kids. And our prayer for you is that God will continue to reveal Himself and reveal His plan through all of this. I think that's the one thing we can never ever let go of, is to know that He's got this. As messed up and as confused as it might look to us in the moment. And I know that your words, I know that just that simple phrase of, be still and know that I'm God, even that speaks to me. So, I know that there will be many people out there looking at this testimony thinking, this is, and we so often think of the word testimony, even as I use that word, we think a testimony is finished, this is, and we recognize it's not for any of us, but it becomes part of our story. And thank you again for sharing your story with us today. God bless you. It's really been a real privilege. Thank you.